The reason I killed her was because he was a child molester.
51-year-old Stephen Sanderson just pled guilty to the murder of another inmate inside a state correctional facility.
What's up? You. Yeah.
Prisons are designed to discourage crime and rehabilitate offenders. But within these grim walls, there exist criminals who even the most hardened inmates fear.
And the story is he walked into the guard's office, threw a knife on the desk that was still covered in blood and all this.
Here are the shocking stories of the world's most feared inmates.
That taking somebody's life is the most grave thing that anyone can do.
We begin with one of the most notorious, who's Britain's most dangerous inmate. How did an ordinary guy become a serial killer? Were there any early signs? To get our answers, we would need to look at his early years. Robert Maudsley. First impressions can truly be deceptive. At first glance, Robert Maudsley looks like any other guy you might pass on the street. But don't be fooled. This unassuming man has a wild side that has made him one of the world's most feared prisoners. Born in 1953, Robert John Maudsley's earliest memories were abuse and neglect, growing up in Liverpool, England. Robert had parents ill-suited to raising children, and yet they had 4 of them. He developed habit early in life, and to fuel his habit, he worked as a worker, walking the streets under the neon lights.
Nor was it particularly about the actual precise abuse that he'd suffered as a child.
While others were dancing to the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, Robert was navigating a dark and dangerous world just to get by. Over the years, Robert Maudsley's mental health took a nosedive, leading to several suicide attempts. Finally, he sought medical help. During his treatment, he opened up to doctors about the dark voices he heard urging him to harm his parents. In a chilling, yet matter-of-fact tone, he told them, "If I had killed my parents back in 1970, none of these people would have died." Maudsley's first murder occurred in 1974 when John Farrell, who picked him up, showed him graphic images of children.
John Farrell was a builder, and that he met Maudsley to have.
Despite reporting this to the authorities and seeking mental health treatment, Maudsley's descent continued. On a single day in 1978, Robert Maudsley turned the prison into a scene straight out of a nightmare. He planned to kill 7 inmates, but his deadly spree ended with 2 victims. His first target was Salmi Darwood. Maudsley lured Darwood into his cell, where he strangled and stabbed him before hiding the body under the bed.
Maudsley tore this man apart. He smashed open his head, and it's a fact that a spoon was found in the victim's brain.
Next, he set his sights on William Roberts. Using a homemade blade, Maudsley brutally attacked Roberts, smashing his skull against the wall and mutilating it beyond recognition. Despite the chaos, Maudsley remained eerily calm. He casually informed the guards about the missing inmates and even placed the bloody dagger on the table, almost like leaving a calling card. Imagine a place where the walls have seen it all and the shadows whisper secrets of the past. This was the basement of Wakefield Prison, where in 1983 a special VIP suite was crafted, not for luxury, but for maximum security. The guest of honor was the infamous Maudsley, aka Hannibal the Cannibal, with a rap sheet longer than a best-selling novel. The resemblance to the lair of the brilliant yet terrifying Hannibal Lecter from the chilling movie The Silence of the Lambs is uncanny. It's as if life imitated art, but with a darker twist. Today, Maudsley resides within the E-walls of HMP Wakefield. serving a life sentence that stretches out before him like the shadows on his cell wall. What happens when a troubled teen gets released from prison only to become a monster serial killer? Niko Jenkins. Niko Allen Jenkins was born in Denver, Colorado on September 16, 1986, to parents David McKee and Laurie Jenkins. His father wasn't a significant presence in his life. His mother was a negative influence. From a young age, Niko was a troubled kid. At the tender age of 7, he brought a .25 caliber handgun to Highland Elementary School in 1993. It took authorities 4 years to apprehend him. By age 11, Niko had already been accused of stealing thrice. This marked the last time he would be free for any significant period. In 1998, he was sent to a group home, but was quickly transferred to a youth detention center for hitting a minor with a clothes hanger, leaving visible marks on the child. Once released from the detention center, he was supposed to live with his mother, but he was quickly sent back for another offense. By August 2001, his probation was revoked, and he was sent to the Nebraska Youth Rehabilitation and Treatment Center. 1 year later, he was transferred to Omaha, where he began threatening those around him. His father, David McGee Rowland, stated in court documents, "Niko has threatened my life and pulled a sawed-off shotgun on me and my own." Soon after, Niko stole 2 cars at gunpoint. In one incident, he asked a 20-year-old woman for a ride. When she refused, he jumped into her car with a shotgun and drove to 22nd Street and Grand Avenue, where he ordered her out. He was arrested and released on July 30th, 2013, after serving 10.5 years. No one could have predicted what was about to unfold. Within a month of release, Jenkins transformed into a ruthless killer. He brutally murdered 4 individuals, claiming he was following orders from Apu, an ancient Egyptian snake god. Despite his bizarre claims, Jenkins was declared competent to stand trial. On May 2017, he was convicted of all 4 murders and sentenced to death.
Niko Jenkins had a lot to say in court throughout the last 4 years, but today he was noticeably quiet.
This panel finds that the death penalty is appropriate, should be, and is hereby given for each of the 4 murders by the defendant.
The courtroom was filled with relief and disbelief as justice was finally served cold. Adding a bizarre twist to his already dark story, Jenkins filed a $24.5 million lawsuit against the state of Nebraska. He argued that they should never have released him, especially considering his history of hearing voices from Apu, which he claimed were ignored. Niko Allen Jenkins is now awaiting execution at the Nebraska Correctional Facility. We have seen a story of the unpredictable nature of human behavior and the complexities of the justice system. How about a prisoner so cold-blooded that sharing a cell with anyone else is out of the question? Jamie Osuna. On November 13, 2011, the town of Bakersfield, California, was shaken by a horrific discovery. The body of IET Pina, a 36-year-old mother of 6, was found in a hotel room where she had been staying. The scene was gruesome. Pina had suffered severe blunt and sharp force injuries that ultimately took her life.
I did sadistically, premeditatedly, deliberately tortured and murdered Yvette Pena.
Jamie Osuna, just 23 years old at the time, was the last person seen with Pina at the hotel. Despite this, he was quick to deny any involvement in her murder when he was arrested later that year. Osuna pleaded not guilty, insisting he was innocent and hoping to find the real culprit. After nearly 6 years in prison, Osuna's story changed dramatically. At 2017, he changed his plea, confessing to both the murder and torture of IET Pina. His confession came with a motive: to avoid the death penalty. Jamie Osuna awaits his fate in a cell far from the world he once knew. Osuna was subsequently sent to Corcoran State Prison in Kings County, where he was finally placed with a cellmate, 44-year-old Luis Romero, who had been imprisoned for almost 20 years for a murder in Los Angeles. On 9th March 2019, a horrible spectacle greeted the guards at Corcoran. They discovered Romero decapitated, with one eye slashed out and other bodily parts taken.
And they say prison officials knew that, which is why he never before had a cellmate until he was locked in a cell with Luis Romero, the man he decapitated.
Osuna wore a necklace fashioned from fragments of Romero's corpse, and the cell walls were coated with blood, with the words, "Ha ha ha," and "The man with 1,000 faces" inscribed across them. Osuna's story reminds us of one fact: darkness can lurk in the hearts of some, and it is important to serve justice and bring peace to those left behind. What happens when a criminal is as slippery as a fish and manages to slip through the fingers of law enforcement again and again for decades? But just when you think the fish has gotten away, it surfaces in the most unexpected ways. Yes, Joseph James DeAngelo did surface after 32 years. Joseph James DeAngelo. Joseph James DeAngelo was a notorious serial murderer who managed to evade the law for decades. According to the FBI, about 40% of murderers manage to slip away, and many of these are serial killers who have never been caught. Until his arrest in 2018, Joseph James DeAngelo Jr. was one of those elusive 40%. DeAngelo, widely known as the Golden State Killer,
now with the latest on the Golden State Killer who terrorized California for decades,
is a former police officer and mechanic who terrorized California from 1974 to 1986. His crimes are truly horrifying. He committed at least 13 brutal murders, 51 vicious and 120 daring burglaries.
That bombshell arrest, that former police officer who authorities say went on a reign of terror for so many years. The numbers, as I mentioned, are simply staggering. At least 12 murders, 45.
Each crime left a trail of fear and sorrow, making him one of the most sophisticated and cruel serial murderers in American history. DeAngelo was a master of disguise, using his police officer background to blend seamlessly into society. For years, he moved like a shadow, striking without warning and leaving a trail of devastation. His ability to remain undetected for so long made him a nightmare for law enforcement and a source of endless fear for the communities he targeted. For decades, the Golden State Killer seemed invincible. But in 2018, thanks to advanced genetic genealogy techniques, investigators were able to match DNA from crime scenes to DeAngelo's family tree. In 2018, Joseph James DeAngelo, 72, was arrested. He subsequently pled guilty to 13 counts of first-degree murder and 13 counts of abduction.
I've listened to all your statements, each one of them, and I'm really sorry to everyone I've hurt.
DeAngelo is presently jailed in California State Prison Corcoran. We've seen a former police officer go rogue and slip through like a shadow for decades, but what could earn an individual the moniker Angel of Death? Charles Cullen. Charles Cullen, often known as the Angel of Death, is a name that sends shivers down your spine. For 16 years, Cullen worked at hospitals across New Jersey and Pennsylvania, quietly and methodically taking the lives of people of all ages. His actions were deliberate and cold-blooded, making him one of the most dangerous prisoners in history. Cullen's method was both clever and chilling. He would administer lethal doses of pharmaceuticals to his unsuspecting patients, choosing chemicals that easily blended in with natural causes of death in a hospital setting. Working as a trusted nurse, Cullen was the last person anyone would suspect.
The medications he used were brutal medications. Medications, for instance, that are paralytics.
His calm demeanor and professional expertise made him the perfect predator in a medical environment. Patients and their families saw him as a caring and reliable healthcare provider, never imagining the dark truth behind his actions. Cullen's reign of terror lasted for over a decade and a half, during which he claimed countless lives. Cullen's arrest in 2003 occurred after a lengthy series of unexplained fatalities that drew the attention of law authorities.
He murdered people right in front of me.
He later admitted to killing up to 40 individuals, with at least 29 proven, while experts think the true figure is far higher. Cullen is now detained at New Jersey State Prison in Trenton, New Jersey. We have seen the Angel of Death. Let's see if he is anywhere as dangerous as a blind, torture, kill, BTK murderer. The name alone sends a chill down your spine. Dennis Rader. The story of Dennis Rader is one of the most chilling and confounding in the annals of American criminal history. He is also known as the BTK Killer. In the Wichita, Kansas area, Rader walked free for more than 3 decades while he terrorized as a master of the heinous act of murder. He earned the moniker BTK, bind, torture, kill, for the method he used to kill his victims. Rader's modus operandi was as sinister as it gets. He would blindfold his victims, torture them, and then brutally kill them. His methods were designed to maximize fear and control, making him one of the most notorious serial killers in American history. Each crime was meticulously planned, showing a level of cold-blooded, terrifying, and incomprehensible precision. Rader appeared to be a normal, upstanding citizen living a double life. He was a husband, a father, and even a church leader. But beneath this facade lay a monster. His ability to blend in and maintain a facade of normalcy made him all the more dangerous.
He lives a double life. He doesn't fit the profile of what we would have expected for the BTK killer.
For over 3 decades, he evaded arrest, leaving a trail of unsolved cases and shattered lives in his wake. The BTK killer's reign of terror lasted from the 1970s to the early 2000s, during which he claimed the lives of at least 10 people. Rader's reign of terror ended in 2005, when breakthroughs in forensic technology and his missteps led to his arrest. He pled guilty to 10 murders and received 10 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of release.
Well, I confronted the family, pulled a pistol, confronted Mr. Otero. There I realized that, I didn't have a mask on or anything. They already could ID me.
The 79-year-old is presently doing time at the El Dorado Correctional Facility. The next prisoner, surprisingly, has a spotless murder record. Could he be any dangerous? El Chapo, Joaquin Guzman, aka El Chapo, is a man mercilessly capable of murder, yet surprisingly with a spotless jail record so far. As one of the most feared convicts on the planet, Joaquin Archivaldo Guzman Loera's reputation precedes him.
If you ask anybody, he's still the most feared drug trafficker in the world. There are places in Mexico where his name is just whispered now.
This ruthless former Mexican drug lord once brutally commanded the Sinaloa cartel, a globally notorious crime syndicate responsible for the cold-blooded execution of thousands of defenseless innocents and feared adversaries. Under Guzman's leadership, the Sinaloa gang became Mexico's richest and most dominant drug empire. So, what makes him the most dangerous convict in the world? His towering status as a drug trafficker kingpin ensures a loyal army of cartel members will fiercely defend him at all costs, both surreptitiously within the jail walls and brazenly outside.
The life that Chapo Guzman lived inside Puente Grande was almost more luxurious than the Italian gangsters who were locked up.
Guzman's disturbingly long criminal history is marked by unprecedented brutality, widespread drug trafficking, the systematic employment of hitmen in hundreds of targeted, chilling assassinations, and, remarkably, multiple daring jail breakouts. He was originally apprehended in Guatemala in 1993 and deported to Mexico, where he received a 20-year term for murder and drug trafficking. After paying guards to escape a high-security jail in 2001, he was apprehended in 2014. He then fled again in 2015, but was apprehended the next year after a gunfight.
We started targeting him through his pilots, his sons and family members, his girlfriends, his spouses.
He was then extradited to the United States, where he was convicted 3 years after and sentenced to life plus 30 years in ADX Florence, Colorado. Guzman is present, like completing his term in a supermax jail, but the question remains, will he try another prison escape? But why did Dylann Roof never intend to escape justice? Dylann Roof, on June 17, 2015, driven by deeply racist motives, Dylann Roof entered the Emmanuel African Methodist Episcopal Church in Charleston, South Carolina. He quietly joined a Bible study before savagely opening fire, cold-bloodedly killing 9 African-American churchgoers.
There are chilling new details from the trial of Dylann Roof tonight. He's accused in the murders of 9 black worshipers at a Bible study.
A CCTV camera clearly captured him leaving the church after the horrific massacre. His actions have been widely described as domestic terrorism, fueled by his extreme racist beliefs. Roof later openly admitted that he hoped to spark a race war. His choice of target, a historic black church that played a pivotal role in the civil rights movement, was deliberately made to send a terrifying message. Before the attack, he had filled pages online with his racist manifesto and photos glorifying white supremacist symbols. He showed no remorse during his trial. In December 2016, Roof was convicted on 33 federal charges, including hate crimes resulting in death.
Dylann Roof has chosen not to question any of the witnesses so far. The jury had found him guilty of 33 federal counts last month. Prosecutors plan to call more than 36 witnesses in the coming days before the jury decides whether Roof should be put to death.
He is currently awaiting execution on death row at United States Penitentiary Terre Haute. We've seen a young boy domestic terrorist. Lee McNair was a master escapist. Richard Lee McNair. Richard Lee McNair's story took a dark turn in November 1987. During a botched robbery, he cold-bloodedly took the life of one man and desperately shot another to escape. These heinous acts landed him 2 life sentences for murder and attempted murder, along with a 30-year prison sentence for the burglary that led to his arrest. It was within the confines of these prison walls that McNair's true colors emerged. In 1988, just a year after his arrest, McNair made his first daring escape attempt while being held at the police station. Using nothing but a small tube of lip balm, he cleverly slipped out of his handcuffs and made a frantic dash for freedom. McNair orchestrated his second escape 4 years later in a display of sheer audacity. He boldly crawled through a ventilation duct, navigating the intricate maze of the prison's infrastructure. His third and most infamous escape occurred on April 5, 2006, at the United States Penitentiary in Pollock, Louisiana. Assigned to yard work, McNair meticulously planned his escape and concealed himself within a pallet of used postal mail bags. He blended in seamlessly with the prison's daily operations. During his escape, he encountered Officer K.L. Bordelon, who pulled him over, unaware of the dangerous fugitive standing before him.
What is, we got an escapee.
Oh, shit. Where from?
A prison.
There's a prison here?
Yeah.
McNair, quick on his feet, provided 2 different names to the officer.
What's your name?
Robert Jones.
Robert Jones?
Uh-huh. Why, I'm not supposed to be on the tracks?
But managed to sweet-talk his way out of trouble. The aftermath of McNair's escape was chaotic, and he was swiftly added to the U.S. Marshal's 15 Most Wanted list. The media frenzy surrounding his escape reached unprecedented levels, captivating the public with his audacity and elusiveness. Despite the intense manhunt and high level of media coverage, McNair managed to evade arrest and made his way into Canada. A master escapist is phenomenal, but what Terry Nichols did was shocking. Terry Lynn Nichols.
Today marks 28 years since the bombing of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City, which remains the largest act of homegrown terrorism in U.S. history.
Terry Lynn Nichols, along with his partner in crime, Timothy McVeigh, orchestrated one of the most shocking acts of domestic terrorism in U.S. history, the 1995 Oklahoma City bombing. On that fateful day, a truck bomb exploded outside the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building, leading to the tragic loss of 168 lives, including many innocent children, and injuring over 600 others.
Before 9/11, the worst act of terrorism on American soil was the Oklahoma City bombing. 168 lives were lost on that day.
Nichols and McVeigh first crossed paths in the Army, where they discovered their shared distrust of the government. This common bond fueled their radical ideas, and they began to plot a massive attack, hoping to ignite a nationwide revolt. With meticulous care, they gathered explosives, piecing together a bomb powerful enough to bring down the entire building. On April 19, 1995, their sinister plan came to life when McVeigh detonated the truck bomb. While McVeigh was on the scene, Nichols, who had played a crucial role in building the bomb and planning the logistics, was nowhere to be found in Oklahoma City. Instead, he was safely in Kansas, but his luck ran out just 2 days later when he was arrested. In 1997, during a federal trial, Nichols was found guilty of conspiracy to use a weapon of mass destruction and 8 counts of involuntary manslaughter for the deaths of federal law enforcement officers. He received a life sentence without the possibility of parole after the jury couldn't agree on imposing the death penalty. Nichols faced further legal action in Oklahoma, where in 2004 he was convicted on state charges, including 161 counts of first-degree murder, one of which included fetal homicide, first-degree arson, and conspiracy. This resulted in him receiving 161 consecutive life sentences, the longest prison sentence ever handed down to a single individual. He is currently held at ADX Florence, a supermax prison in Colorado. McVeigh, on the other hand, was executed by lethal injection on June 11, 2001. Orchestrating a city bombing is outrageous, but the next prisoner was stone cold, cold enough to be called a corpse collector. Harrison Graham. Harrison Frank Marty Graham, known as the Corpse Collector, was a notorious figure during the rise of serial killings in the 1980s across the U.S. Despite his friendly demeanor, Graham was a trusted handyman to the women in his building, starkly contrasting the horrible secrets hidden within his apartment. The truth came to light on August 1987 when repeated complaints about foul odors led the landlord to demand that Graham vacate his apartment. Instead of complying, Graham barricaded his door and fled. When the landlord couldn't gain entry, the police were called. Upon breaking down the door, they discovered a horrific scene. 2 women's bodies, one naked and the other partially dressed, surrounded by decay and filth. Further investigation revealed even more chilling details. The apartment was littered with more remains, including skeletonized remains and dismembered bones. Some bones were stashed in a duffel bag on the roof, while others were found in the basement. The gruesome discoveries painted a picture of a man who was both charming and dangerously deranged. Graham, who had been evading police, surrendered on August 17th after persuasion from his mother. Upon arrest, he confessed to the murders of 7 women. On April 28, 1988, Graham was found guilty on all charges, receiving 6 death sentences and 1 life imprisonment term for the murders. As leniency, the court ruled that Graham's death sentence would only be carried out after he has served out his life sentence, meaning he would never be executed. Today, Harrison resides in a Meade-Diam security facility in Pennsylvania. At least Graham got leniency in that he would never be executed, but he would have to spend the rest of his life behind bars. The next prisoner was a wolf in sheep's clothing, hiding in plain sight within the walls of justice. Scott Lee Kimball. Scott Lee Kimball, one of America's most ruthless convicted serial killers, left an indelible scar on law enforcement and the terrified communities he preyed upon. With a chilling trail of death, Kimball brutally murdered at least 4 innocent people.
Kimball is serving 70 years in prison after pleading guilty to 4 murders.
While investigators strongly suspect his sinister involvement in up to 21 other baffling unsolved cases. Kimball's diabolical modus operandi relied on exploiting his trusted role as a trusted FBI informant who shamelessly exploited his privileged position to wreak havoc on the lives of innocent people.
You know, the murder, yes, I committed murder. I pled guilty to murder, so I'd be a murderer.
He gained the trust of his unsuspecting victims, only to murder them mercilessly.
Hello? Joe? Hello? Hello? Joe? Yeah, this is Joe. Yeah, it's Mary. Hey, Mary, what's up? I've been trying to get a hold of you.
During the infamous first year of his killing spree, Kimball served as an informant for the FBI.
Actually given her money to take off. I knew Scott was in contact with her, taking her to and from work. Knew that he worked for the FBI.
The role handsomely compensated him and conveniently shielded him from prosecution for numerous elaborate fraud schemes. Even with this, Kimball's information to the Bureau could have been more valuable for prosecuting other crimes. Much of it was later shockingly discovered to be utterly false. 2 of Scott Lee Kimball's victims were his daughter and his uncle. His second wife, the mother of his 2 sons, accused him of kidnapping and raping her twice. The FBI recruitment helped him evade those charges, but a 2006 fraud investigation eventually exposed his murders. Scott Lee Kimball violated his plea deal by failing to lead police to a missing victim's body. This betrayal led to him facing serious murder charges for all 4 victims discovered in remote areas across Colorado and Utah, along with multiple fraud charges. Under Colorado's habitual offender laws, Kimball received a staggering 70-year sentence after pleading guilty to the charges, which included an attempt to escape prison. Currently, Kimball is serving his lengthy sentence at the high-security United States Penitentiary, Florey NCE High in Colorado, located right next to the notorious ADX Florence. While Scott Kimball was busy singling out unsuspecting individuals, exploiting their trust and vulnerability for his twisted gain, this inmate's journey was a tale of transformation. But it was a transformation for all the wrong reasons. Charles Bronson. One might say Charles Bronson is the world's most notorious prisoner, but let's not forget he started as just a regular guy. He was born Michael Peterson in December 1952 in Luton, Bedfordshire. Only after a promoter saw him throw a few punches in a bare-knuckle fight did he adopt the stage name Charles Bronson, inspired by the famous American actor. Bronson's journey into the criminal world began with a little mischief. In 1974, he found himself behind bars for 7 years for armed robbery. But little did he know, this was just the beginning of a wild ride. Over the next 12 years, he managed to rack up so many altercations with fellow inmates and guards that he was shuffled between 8 different prisons.
Yes, Bronson has misbehaved and committed acts of violence which need to be dealt with by the courts. He's a very strong man. He's one of the strongest men probably in the prison system, even at his age now.
After a brief stint in the boxing ring, Bronson thought he could leave his criminal past behind. However, fate had other plans, and he was back in jail in 1988 for yet another robbery. Despite his reputation for being a bit of a hothead, Bronson has never actually taken a life.
Bronson is a combination of both bad and has underlying psychological problem.
Still, his relentless aggression has landed him a life sentence, making him a true legend in the annals of prison history. So, while Charles Bronson might be the most infamous prisoner in the world, he's also a reminder that sometimes even the toughest guys can have a soft spot for a good nickname. He is infamous for kidnapping many hostages during conflicts with guards and has spent time in each of England's 3 special mental facilities. His justification for his conduct is straightforward. I'm a lovely man, but occasionally I lose my senses and become ugly. That does not make me bad, just confused. While Charles Bronson is indeed one of the most notorious prisoners, another inmate may alter your perception of notoriety. Richard Kuklinski's disturbing history suggests he might have eclipsed Bronson in terms of sheer danger. Richard Kuklinski.
And if you don't kill me, you're stupid. Because the next time you see me, I will kill you.
Richard Kuklinski, born on April 11, 1935, in Jersey City, New Jersey, emerged from a childhood marked by profound trauma and abuse. Raised by physically abusive parents, Kuklinski found solace and a sense of belonging in the streets. From an early age, Kuklinski exhibited a disturbing propensity for extreme violence. He frequently inflicted harm on innocent animals. These early acts of cruelty foreshadowed the brutal crimes he would commit as an adult. Kuklinski's formal education ended abruptly after 8th grade. He was known as the Iceman for his cool and planned accuracy, and his illicit operations included anything from bootlegging to murder. He was competent with a variety of weapons and used chilling methods, including freezing victims' corpses to influence the moment of death, complicating investigations.
So when the medical examiner does the autopsy and opens the body up, he finds ice inside the body.
Kuklinski's ruthlessness extended to torture, as he found joy in inflicting pain. He disposed of victims in isolated locales to hide his tracks and leave no trace. He operated as a hitman for various organized criminal organizations, developing a reputation that made him a valuable asset. His arrest in 1986 revealed the full depth of his misdeeds. He was accused with 5 killings, and his trial exposed the horrific details of his dark world.
Law enforcement authorities have arrested one of the most notorious contract killers in state history. A self-employed Bergen County man is behind bars, charged with 5 murders.
Kuklinski was first charged with the murder of George Malaban. Malaban met Richard in 1980 to sell videotapes, but it would be his last encounter. Malaban's corpse was eventually found packed inside a barrel, which terrified the community. Another victim, Louis Mazgay, succumbed to Richard's lethal machinations. Mazgay died tragically at the hands of the Iceman while attempting to get a videotape contract. Richard's half-decomposed corpse was discovered 15 months later with ice crystals in his tissues, a horrifying detail that would eternally bind Richard to his moniker. Richard Kuklinski's criminal career came to an end with a verdict that matched the severity of his crimes: 2 consecutive life sentences. But does prison reform individuals or fuel their dangerous appetites? In Barry Mills' case, it was the latter. Barry Mills. Barry Mills's descent into a life of crime kicked off early. His first encounter with the law happened in 1967 when he spent a year in county jail. Instead of scaring him straight, this stint only fueled his appetite for rebellion. By 1969, Barry had found himself in the middle of an armed robbery that changed everything. This landed him in the California state prison system, where he would spend the rest of his days. Once inside the prison walls, Barry's star began to rise. He quickly became entangled in the prison's web of violence and power struggles. One of his biggest moves was joining the Aryan Brotherhood, a white supremacist group that had been around since 1964.
Found out he claimed to be part of a white supremacist group called the Aryan Brotherhood.
This happened during his time at the infamous San Quentin prison, known for its tough crowd and even tougher rules.
This is the most secretive prison in America. No one is allowed inside, and the only pictures we have are from federal lawsuits.
In 1979, Barry's reputation for being a bit of a brute was sealed when he was found guilty of nearly beheading another inmate, John Maroff, over a gambling debt at USP Atlanta. According to a federal indictment, Barry played a key role in shaping the Aryan Brotherhood's leadership. By 1980, he was part of a 3-member governing commission, officially making him one of the top dogs in the gang. It was like being promoted to CEO, but with a much tougher designation. As Barry's influence grew, so did the Aryan Brotherhood's illegal activities. He teamed up with his sidekick, Tyler Bingham, and they dove headfirst into drug distribution and racketeering in both federal and state prisons. Their reign of terror knew no bounds, and they became the stuff of prison legends. But Barry wasn't done yet. In 1996, he suggested that the Aryan Brotherhood merge with another prison group, the Dirty White Boys. Mills's reign of terror came to an end in March 2006, when he, Bingham, and 3 other Aryan Brotherhood officials were charged on a variety of charges. The accusations included murder, conspiracy, drug trafficking, and racketeering. The scope of their illicit activity was astonishing. Mills and Bingham were finally convicted of murder and condemned to life in prison without parole. Federal prosecutors sought the capital sentence for both men, but the jury deadlocked on whether to kill them, saving their lives.
The jury, after hearing all the facts, decides that we don't have enough. So, and that's just part of a trial.
Rival prison gangs were aware of the Aryan Brotherhood's growth. tensions simmered under the surface, and in 1997, Mills and Bingham allegedly instructed their members to wage a racial war against a rival gang, the DC Blacks. Suddenly, this brutal clash led to chaos and bloodshed in the prison. Savage combat ensued between inmates from the Aryan Brotherhood and the DC Blacks, with multiple deaths on both sides. Thanks for watching. If you found this informative, please like, subscribe, and share. Let us know in the comments which inmate was the most dangerous and notorious. Stay tuned for more stories that reveal hidden truths from around the world.